On 22nd April, the peaceful valleys of Pahalgam, often called the mini Switzerland of India, turned into a killing field. 26 Hindu men or tourists were singled out for their religious identity, and in front of their families, wives, children, they were lined up and then gunned down by 4 cold-blooded terrorists. It was India's first terror attack in 2 decades. Leaders across the globe condemned the brutality. Messages of solidarity poured in. But when the world looked towards the so-called torchbearers of free speech, the Western liberal media, they didn't see terrorism. They saw just gunfire. BBC wrote, "Gunmen attack tourist convoy in Indian Kashmir." New York Times said, "Gunmen killed 26 in Kashmir, escalating tensions between nuclear neighbors." Gunmen, not terrorists, not jihadists, just gunmen. Even the Indian government had formally objected to the BBC's language. And the US government itself clarified to the New York Times it was a terrorist attack, plain and simple. So the question is this, folks. Why does the Western liberal media behave this way when terrorism strikes India? And more broadly, is there a systemic bias in how they report violence in the global south, especially in India? Welcome to the Global Public Discourse. Today we pull back the curtain on Western media biases, global ideological filters, and the silent war waged not on battlefields, but rather in editorial rooms. Before getting into the topic, if you like our work, then please consider subscribing to the channel. Thank you very much. Now let's get started. The Western liberal media operates within a predefined ideological framework, one rooted in post-colonial theory, academic moralism, and binary lens of oppressor and oppressed. The leftist framework is increasingly criticized for being reductionist, ideologically selective, and blind to complex realities, particularly emanating from the global south. According to their worldview, conflicts are not complex, they are symbolic in nature. You must first find the victim, identify the power structure, that means who is more powerful and who is less, then declare the more powerful protagonist as villain. And it is plain social justice storytelling, not journalism, at least from my standard. And in this framework, India, despite being the world's largest democracy, is cast as the villain. Why? Because it is a Hindu majority country. Because it stands tall without needing Western moral validation. Because it knows how to take bold, important decisions for its security by revoking the Article 370 in Kashmir Valley. And the result? Well, the narrative becomes standardized. India, the oppressor, Kashmiri Muslims, the oppressed ones, and the attack against Indians termed as resistance. Any Indian response would be called authoritarianism, which is injustice as per their standards. So major outlets like The Guardian, The New York Times, and Al Jazeera frame India's Kashmir policy as Hindu nationalism or democratic backsliding. But here is what is missing, folks. The ethnic cleansing of Kashmiri pundits since 1990s, totally ignored by them. The role of terror groups like Hizbul Mujahideen or Lashkar-e-Taiba, Jaish-e-Mohammed, cleverly vilified. And Pakistan's decades-long jihadist infiltration pretentiously slipped under the rug. So these are either underreported or worse, rationalized. Now, let's test the oppressor and oppressed framework. Selective morality and hypocrisy. Where is it when Hindus and Sikhs are forcefully converted in Pakistan? Hindus are persecuted in Bangladesh, and blasphemy laws are used to jail or kill minorities. Did you ever read any BBC article on Hindu persecution after Sheikh Hasina's government in Bangladesh was toppled? Did the New York Times publish a single op-ed on the systemic decline and forceful conversion of the Hindu population in Pakistan from 20% in 1947 to just 1.6% in 1998 as per their records? Of course not, because this framework is not applied universally. It is deployed selectively to support an ideological bias. When Hindus are killed, it is called communal violence, or when Islamist terrorists are targeted by the state, it is called human rights violation. The Western liberal media's oppressed narrative reduces the complex geopolitical, cultural, and historical realities to simplistic moralist tales. How funny. As a result, nuanced journalism and authentic voices from the global south are drowned out in favor of Western liberal projection. Now, let's examine as to why it happens like that. The global left and the political Islam. Now, we come to the heart of the matter. Why does the global left often find itself aligned ironically with radical Islam? It is an alliance of mutual convenience, in fact. Since the death of socialism in the Western world, a decimated left required badly another political partner for their survival. And that space was happily provided by political Islam, a tactical, ideological marriage often called the red-green axis. Red for the Marxist leftists, green for political Islam. Now, let's look at the ideological core, the romanticization of Islamism. The left views Islamism as anti-colonial resistance and capitalistic operation, ignoring its patriarchal and theocratic side. Secondly, victimhood fetish. Any group that claims to be oppressed gets a free pass regardless of its own oppressive actions. A perfect case study? The 1979 Iranian Revolution, where French intellectuals like Michel Foucault even termed it as liberation movement. Never mind the fact that it gave birth to a theocratic dictatorship. After the hurried withdrawal of the US Army from Afghanistan, leftists call it a liberation from the shackles of slavery. And this continues today on university campuses in the UK and US. Groups like Students for Justice in Palestine align with groups sympathetic to Hamas. Even professors defend Islamist ideologues in the fancy name of anti-colonial resistance. Blasphemy killings? Silenced. Secular Muslim voices like Ayaan Hirsi Ali? Censored. As Ayaan Hirsi Ali famously warned, the regressive left in the West has formed a dangerous alliance with Islamists under the guise of anti-colonialism and minority protection. Since the self-destructive left has gone on a dangerous track, that leads us to explore the right-wing section of the Western media and their attitude towards Indian affairs. Do right-wing media outlets do any better? Well, that's a good question. Western conservative media like Fox News or the Daily Telegraph generally report better to terror attacks in India as compared to their leftist counterparts. They call them acts of terrorism clearly, highlight Islamist extremism as the cause, support India's right to self-defense. And during the Pahalgam attack, these outlets didn't hesitate to use the word terror. They didn't dance around ideological nuances. They call it what it was. And even here, there is a catch. For them, India's exotic, chaotic, and India's secular democracy is misunderstood because it doesn't resemble their version of Western secularism. And wrongly, they don't see the country as a pluralistic, multi-ethnic, multi-religious entity. Rather, they tag the entire nation as Hindu society. In addition, they understand Hinduism very poorly. That is because they view the world through a Judeo-Christian supremacy lens. So whether it is the liberal left or the conservative right, India is still viewed as other, and in that other, or being written in the capital letter, as something that needs to be explained, corrected, or even tamed. Let's unearth the last point, the real reason. Let's go one step deeper. Why this discomfort? Why this constant distortion? Because India is rising and rising very fast. From today being the 5th largest economy, tomorrow it would be the 4th largest one. And soon it would become the 3rd largest economy. Despite its challenges, it produces 3rd highest number of unicorns in the world, from 3rd world country to a civilizational power. So do you think the West will accept it so easily by swallowing its pseudo-pride? The Western liberal media's biased reporting of incidents like Pahalgam exposes not just its political double standards, but also a deeper psychological pattern. I call it post-colonial cognitive dissonance. They cannot reconcile India's rise with their old colonial mindset of considering themselves the rule writer and the self-appointed custodian of moralist behavior, and also neo-Orientalism in reverse. To hide their desire of preserving the status quo, it infantilizes the global south, treating them as unable to act independently or rationally, unless guided by Western saviors. So, what can we do in this regard? Well, the government should counter the negative press wherever it should, and the way it did with the BBC on Pahalgam case. Secondly, it should ensure by sending a clear message to these media agencies that since they make money by selling their news content to the people of the country, hence they must stick to the ethics of fair reporting, then being guided by their shallow ideologies. Furthermore, I think it is not a bad idea for New Delhi to audit these foreign media affiliates rigorously to ensure compliance with Indian laws, especially FCRA, Foreign Contribution Regulation Act. However, that is also true that in a democracy, we have a limited scope to take stern actions against these actors. This is where the citizen activism should take front seat. Not just within the territory, but also outside. Indians are uniquely placed to disseminate their side of narrative due to its size and numbers in every aspect, and also its multilingual storytelling character. Most importantly, we must stop treating Western bias as intellectual authority or universal truth. India is no longer a footnote in someone else's story. It is writing its own narrative, so the liberal media needs to update its understanding, approach, and coverage to reflect current realities. Until then, stay informed, stay alert, and stay proud. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.